the fact that the Indian government has banned over 40 more Chinese apps. Now remember, near the end of June, 59 Chinese apps had been banned by the government of India to protect national interest and security, and that included the hugely popular TikTok app. Now, almost 50 more apps have been banned again for operating as clones of those that were banned previously. The list of this particular apps that have been banned again in this fresh decision is yet to be announced. However, it has been reported that the announcement would take place soon. In fact, for more details on that, we're now joined by Neeta Sharma. Neeta, what do we know about this new ban and what was the reason for these new apps to be banned?
As you were mentioning, Ruby, these are the clone apps of the apps which were earlier banned. Earlier 59 apps were banned. Now 47 apps have been banned. So now in total 106 Chinese apps have been banned for usage in India. You know, in fact, Ministry of Information and Technology had also written to these apps saying that if they are being found, you know, to be downloaded here, then a case against them can be booked under the Information and Technology Act. In fact, you know, the government has also constituted a committee which comprises of officials from Ministry of Home Affairs, Electronics, IT, Legal and CERTN also. This committee looks into the replies which it gets from these organizations and scrutinizes them and then bans them. As far as these 49 apps are concerned, these are TikTok Lite, Hello Lite, and also you know, all these lighter versions of these apps. We are also being told that the government sources are in fact telling us there are in fact more than 200 apps also identified by the government, in which, you know, in coming days we would be seeing that action would be taken against them. As far as the reason for what these apps are being, you know, pointed out and why they are being banned, the government says that their data collection policy is under a question mark, and also fact that they have been data harvesting done by these the reason why the government is now trying to, you know, shortlist all these apps which can be sharing data, because as far as these apps are concerned, Ruby, 270 apps, you know, these include 14 apps of MI, Xiaomi, FaceU apps, and also other apps. There are also reports that apps like Alibaba Express and AliExpress are also under scrutiny of the government, in which, you know, some explanation has been sought from them, because the government feels, as per as the Chinese policy is concerned, even if these apps are being used in India,
Neeta,
these apps have to share the data.
Right, Neeta, thank you very much for all that information. And in fact, to take a deeper look into the matter, we're now joined by Apar Gupta. He's a lawyer and the executive director of the Internet Freedom Foundation, as well as we are going to have Burgess Malu, who is the public policy director with ShareChat. Let me go to Burgess first. Mr. Malu, if you could just share some light on how the fact that these apps were banned earlier and now more apps have been banned, how has that fared for a business like yours?
Thanks for having me on, Ruby. I think it's been a great move by the government of India, because obviously there's now space for Indian platforms, and you've seen almost over a dozen Indian platforms come up in this space. And there's also more a focus on these platforms from an investment perspective. So there are a lot of investors also excited about the Indian market. And it's not just short videos. You're seeing this similarly happening in you know, document scanning apps. You're seeing this happening in many other areas. So I think it's a great move. There's going to be a lot more innovation that's going to happen in the Indian ecosystem, and it's a big boost for the startups in India.
Right. I'm going to take one question to Apar now. Mr. Apar Gupta, if you could shed some light on what exactly are these clone apps, and was it an oversight in the earlier last month's order that this fresh order had to be issued? Apar, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. There was somebody who was speaking behind you from the check room. So I think the last order and neither this order have been made public. So one does not really know what is the basis of the reasoning. What we did have last time was a press release which was put out, which set out certain reasons, and then there was an annexure listing the apps, but one did not even have specific reasons attributed to why each individual application and what was the assessment done. So in terms of a much more standardized policy, a criteria which is there as to what is being the basis of the determination, one really does not know. So the subsequent follow-up action also, and I think there have been some press reports even in the Economic Times which indicate the government is coming out with a policy or will kind of come up with certain kind of criteria. I think for a ban is something which does require deeper level of oversight, and also India may be the only country which is coming out with criteria for banning smartphone applications. I think other countries have approached similar issues of national security.
So if you could explain to us, Apar, how does this work technically, and maybe Burgess can also weigh in on that. I mean, apps don't really follow geopolitical borders. So how can you have a ban on certain apps in certain countries? How does that work? And does that mean that the fact that these clone apps existed, can these companies create more clone apps, in which case a layperson would ask that how many apps will the government ban then?
So definitely it does seem like a game of whack-a-mole in which whatever is the need which is sought to be justified will be towards bringing and blocking specific smartphone applications, but there'll be competitors which will come up. What will be the impact though will be on much more established enterprises which establish, let's say, a local presence, which have large departments which run these apps and also have a presence within India. So, of course, the smaller alternatives will be there. But here's the issue. Quite often, if they're social networking apps, they require that level of scale to actually operate and work. And also, one really cannot look at it as a policy goal which has been questioned by several commentators, because if you have a national cybersecurity policy which is not yet out there, it's still in a process of being formed. There's no specific data protection law in India.
So are you suggesting that this ban is an arbitrary ban and the kind of decisions that are coming in are arbitrary in the absence of those policies?
So arbitrariness is essentially a pick and choose policy as per definition, and I do think they are arbitrary, because
but
I don't think
you had said earlier that there is no criteria, but the criteria that has been mentioned earlier, I believe in the press release as well, was in the interest of national security. In fact, I'd like to take that to Burgess as well, just trying to understand in terms of how these apps save data, and in terms of your business also. The Indian apps, and the ecosystem that you said that is going to get a boost. In fact, also there is a push in terms of the Digital India, growing that sector, as well as a push to make India self-reliant. So in all of this, don't the same sort of concerns arise with Indian apps too? What's the difference?
Absolutely not. If you look at the laws in China, they very clearly state that companies operating out of China have to share data that they harvest from users with the government of China. That's not the case with democracies across the world, whether it's American platforms or Indian platforms. If we are collecting data, and obviously, platforms have to collect data to provide various kinds of services. So if you want to know who are your friends on the platform, you have to share your contacts. Similarly, if you want to post pictures on the platform, you have to share access to your gallery. That said, it's not that companies like us or any Indian company or US company will capture the data and automatically share it with the government. So there's a vast difference between a platform operating out of China, where the authoritarian government over there wants access to every piece of information on its citizens and even those outside of its borders, and platforms operating in India, where the government follows due process, where any information has to go through a court order. There's a vast difference, and I don't think it's fair to say that Indian platforms would do the same thing that operators out of China would do, or even for that matter American platforms. There's a significantly vast cleavage between the two.
Right. Well, just last question to you, Apar. You were speaking earlier about how there is no clear policy. The list is not out. The only thing that came out from the side of the government was just a press release. In fact, we were speaking to our correspondent earlier, Neeta, and she says that over 200 apps are being considered that are possibly going to see a similar fate. So, what would you like? What would you like the government to come out and how would you like the government to come out and address this issue?
So I think the best way to address this issue, especially
just for the sake of transparency, yes.
Yeah, for the sake of national security, especially, and all of us are aligned with that objective, is to make individual assessments and to give a better source of information, which brings a degree of confidence to these kind of assessments. Because if you do keep applying these policies of banning 49, 200, etc., by itself, through a ministerial process without adequate oversight, without publishing these orders, assessments, you're fundamentally undermining the very notion of a democracy, which is the rule of law. So that's what I'll say, is that it's not the result, it's the basis of the result which needs to be done in a manner which satisfies a level of legality.
Right. Well, thank you, both of you, Apar Gupta and Burgess Malu, for joining us for those insights. Thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast.